DB Durham presents
Horror Sounds of the Night, A Brief History. In 1986, a cassette tape was released titled Horror Sounds of the Night by the once great Halloween supply company Topstone Industries. Although it was marketed to children, an infamous track lurks near the end of the recording that should have never fallen on the ear of an innocent child. Finding out how the track got there in the first place and the litigation that followed is one aim of this piece. There's a story to tell here of the notorious cassette's creation, as well as the rise and fall of the company who brought it into existence. The Topstone Rubber Toy Co, originally based in Bethel, Connecticut, was established in the 1920s. However, the company didn't start producing masks of any kind until the 1930s. Then, in 1950, Topstone hired famous illustrator and artist of the day, Keith Ward, to help breathe new life into the industry. Ward was already well known for his illustrations in books like The Black Stallion and the Dick and Jane series. He's also celebrated for his clever creations in the advertising industry by designing characters like Elsie, the Borden cow. Also renowned for his impressionistic oil paintings, Ward is cited as a gifted art teacher. Ward's beloved mask designs were created for 10 years for Topstone, right out of his home studio in New Canaan. Some of the memorable characters he created for Topstone include Horror, a one-eyed zombie, which would later be known as Shock Monster, Snarling Gorilla, Devils, Skulls, Pirates, Witches, Gillmen, and, let's not forget, the Goof. Topstone's advertisements were widely distributed in horror fan magazines and became a fixture of catalog mail order pages in the late 1950s. Keith Ward's original illustrations were used in the print ad campaigns. The sheer inventiveness of the illustrations and exaggerated descriptions was more than enough to lure legions of youth to Topstone products. Not surprisingly, the masks themselves always paled in comparison to Ward's actual artwork, but that didn't seem to deter anyone from buying them. Eventually, with Topstone's saturation of the advertising market and through product placement in TV and movies, the brand became synonymous with Halloween. Topstone's next milestone was in 1961 when a 21-year-old Mel Goldberg took the reins as president and owner. His father-in-law had acquired the company and decided Goldberg had the ambition to run it. One of the large-scale changes Goldberg made was to no longer have the products made in the USA, opting for the more profitable Korea, Taiwan, and Hong Kong, eventually opening plants in Mexico and Sri Lanka. In the 1970s, after dropping the Rubber Toy Company portion of its name, safe to say that was a good call, the newly christened Topstone Industries moved operations to Danbury, Connecticut, continuing to produce Keith Ward masks throughout their history. Topstone also added many other characters to their roster over the years, but the Ward masks remained the most popular by far. In a 1986 Associated Press interview with Mel Goldberg, he remarks that the reason for the mask's longevity in the marketplace is due to the fact that the people who are now parents had the masks, and for reasons of nostalgia, they would like to introduce them to their kids. Interestingly, the article also has his comments on how the Halloween business has started to pick up since the TYLENOL poisoning scare in September of 1982. Here are his comments.
The TYLENOL incident changed Halloween. What happened then was people started having parties for their children, causing a large amount of adults who maybe had given candy on Halloween to suddenly have to take care of having a party.
Goldberg said.
It was also, I think, a certain backlash for a lot of parents who didn't want to give up Halloween. It was a cute holiday, a fun holiday. Why should they give up something that had been so much fun all those years and suddenly was taken away by a few crazies? And I'm Casey Kasem.
The TYLENOL incident. If you are unfamiliar with this little historical tidbit, allow me to give you a brief summary. In the evening of September 29th, 1982, a 12-year-old girl was given TYLENOL to help a sore throat. The following morning, her parents found her unresponsive. Her death would be the first of many that would strike a panic in the nation during the week that followed. It was eventually discovered that there was a link to the deaths and TYLENOL capsules. Those capsules had been laced with potassium cyanide. This tragedy forced Johnson & Johnson and the FDA to work together to figure out a solution to prevent this from occurring again. This event caused a huge shift in how we purchase and consume over-the-counter medications. The changes included tamper-proof foil seals and the invention of the caplet.
Horror Sounds of the Night
Made its debut
In 1986.
Going back as far as the early 1960s, spooky recordings of creepy sound effects have been available. Horror sounds became many a child of the 80s go-to Halloween soundtrack. The recording is 30 minutes in length, with sides A and B being identical. The following is a list in order of all the original source material that Topstone lifted. Topstone had gotten their hands on the source material through means which are unclear, mixed them up, added a few sound effects over the top, and presented the cassette as original new material. Here is the complete list. Track 1, BBC Records and Tapes, Volume 13, Sound Effects, Death and Horror, 1977. The first track on the cassette is taken from this album, listed here as Phantom of the Opera, organ sounds. Among the music in this section is a composition titled
L'Orlesini Suite,
1972 by
Georges Bizet.
Sorry. Track number 2, Power Records, Ghostly Sounds, early 1970s. The second track on the cassette was taken from the LP identified here as Phantom of the Cathedral. Two versions of this LP exist with nearly identical album covers. Track number 3, Pickwick International, Sounds to Make You Shiver, mid-1970s. Believe it or not, the entire remainder of Horror Sounds of the Night is taken directly from side 2 of this album. In the same running order, on the original album, they are listed in order as Witch Laugh, Count Dracula and His Victim, Screams and Groans, Moans and Groans, Cats, Dogs, Banging Shutter, Phantom Piano, Creaky Door, and part of Breaking Windows.
The Count Dracula and His Victim track is the one that is the questionable one that was included on this cassette. This track was recorded for adults. It was never intended for children when it was originally recorded.
It's nothing terrible.
And wouldn't you know it, this little cassette was at the center of a heated lawsuit. Not for the reasons one would think. Surprisingly, the grievance was not copyright infringement or misappropriation, because Topstone most likely did not have the rights from 3 separate companies who the recordings originated from. Topstone had met with D. Robbins Company several years earlier. Robbins Company had approached Topstone executives with their idea of creating a novelty Halloween soundtrack on cassette titled Haunted Horror. Topstone liked the idea and decided to greenlight the project. The cassette was recorded and manufactured. Shortly thereafter, Topstone abruptly terminated the agreement they had with Robbins Company and made their own version of the Halloween recording, using all that ripped-off material. Topstone then shelved Robbins' Haunted Horror while distributing and promoting their own. It was eventually settled in court, where Robbins was allowed access to his version for sale. Topstone promised Horror Sounds of the Night would be spine-tingling and 30 weird minutes. I don't know about spine-tingling, but it certainly lived up to the 30 weird minutes part. A classic piece of Halloween history. And finally, Topstone officially closed its doors in 1995, as they had been purchased by a company called Paper Magic Company. The legend can always live on eBay.
I'm done here. You guys are a bunch of crying little swamp cakes chickens on way.
Next up, a cicada fights for its life.